How many discounts does USAA Auto Insurance offer? Too many to say here. Multi-vehicle discount, safe driver discount, new vehicle discount, storage discount, legacy.
How many discounts will you stack up? Visit USAA.com/auto discounts. Restrictions apply.
This episode is brought to you by Indeed. When your computer breaks, you don't wait for it to magically start working again. You fix the problem. So why wait to hire the people your company desperately needs? Use Indeed's sponsored jobs to hire top talent fast. And even better, you only pay for results. There's no need to wait. Speed up your hiring with a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply.
Hello, and welcome to Dyslexia Devoted, the podcast dedicated to building awareness, understanding, and strategies to help those with dyslexia. I'm your host, Lisa Parnello, dyslexia therapist and founder of Parnello Education Services. Join me as we dive into today's episode of Dyslexia Devoted. Hello, and welcome to episode 129 of Dyslexia Devoted, all about when dyslexia and medical conditions collide. Now, before I dive into the topic of the day, I just wanted to update you on all of the amazing educator trainings that are going on in the next month or so. So at the time of this recording, it will be soon the Building Readers for Life annual conference, which is a virtual conference, which is funny because I will also be at a physical conference for Wilson credentialed trainers and teachers. And so both of those are happening next week. And so I will be doing one of the presentations for the Building Readers for Life. So I really hope you enjoy it. And then the week after that is the Science of Reading Summit. So I'm really excited to be not only a presenter all about how dyslexia impacts writing, but I am also one of the sponsors of the event. So I really hope you guys get to enjoy and get your free ticket. Or if you want to get more continued access and extra bonuses, there's also a paid version that has a whole bunch of amazing extras that go with it too. And last but definitely not least, I will be doing my live workshop series again this year. It was such a hit last September, and I've decided to do it in August this year, mostly because that's when I know I have a bit more free time for all of you guys. So the live workshop series is coming in August, so stay tuned for that. I'm still finalizing the details, and I'll get them to you as soon as it's ready, okay? Now, for this week's episode, dyslexia and medical conditions. So one of the things that I do is I work with kids with really complex cases. One of the reasons I ended up with my tutoring practice is because I was already working at a school for kids with dyslexia, and some of those kids had more severe things impacting them. And so let's talk about some of the different conditions that can also happen with dyslexia, or actually just happen in general. It has nothing to do with dyslexia, I'll be perfectly honest. But the challenges that come with parsing out where one condition ends and the next one begins. So let's go into a couple of cases of kids that I have worked with over the years. One case of a kid that I currently see has Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, which is essentially he's extra bendy is the best way to describe it. All of his joints are extra bendy, but there's other medical things that can also come along with that. And so while certain things seem pretty harmless, other things can actually cause larger problems in life that can be worrisome. But in general, what I see in my office is really when it comes to writing or sitting for a long period of time. So when this kiddo is hanging out here in my office, every once in a while we say he just needs to go flop. And when I say flop, I have a soft rug on the ground or a little couch, and he will literally just go flop down on one of those two places and let his body release. And that way he can start feeling better again to come back to a chair and sit up. Not that I actually even make kids sit in chairs. So that would be another thing is I teach a lot of kids with ADHD, and chairs are not actually required. Kids can sit, they can stand. None of my chairs match. So that's one of the things anybody who walks in here is like, why don't you have matching chairs? It is actually completely intentional. I have a stool and I have a hard, solid chair, which most of the kids think of as punishment. No one actually uses that one. And a spinny, office chair kind of thing. And the kids get to choose each and every day which one they want to sit in. I don't care which one it is. And sometimes they just choose to stand up and work for the day. And this is where being adaptable in teaching can really make a difference for kids with other medical conditions, is that sometimes their body physically needs something different. Or I had one kid who literally like laid on the ground and worked on the floor one day because that's what they felt they physically needed to do to feel literally grounded. So it can be really tricky trying to know that you need to match a educational need with a medical need and get all of those needs met at one time. And I know I have an unreasonable blessing if I work with kids one-on-one, but some of these things you can implement into a classroom. And I did it in my own classroom as well, which is when I'm teaching, you have to be in a certain place where I know you're actually paying attention to me. But when it's work time, I don't care if you're on the floor. I don't care if you're standing up. I don't care if you are, at a back table away from other people or at a picnic table right outside my window because my school allowed that. I know not all schools do. And making sure that we accommodate kids in ways that aren't changing what they're doing, but how they physically feel while doing it can make a huge impact. Okay, on to the next one. Dyslexia is not a vision problem, but that does not mean it can't happen comorbidly with a vision problem. So I have one little girl I've worked with for multiple years, and she had a significant vision problem that they didn't realize for a long time because she was little and there was COVID and all sorts of things. And so this poor child couldn't see anything hardly. They could see like shapes and not crash into things, but in general couldn't see enough to read for years, and no one really realized at first because, COVID and stuff. And so once they eventually figured it out and got, vision treatments and eye surgeries and things like that, this poor child was years behind in reading, but not because of dyslexia, but because of they physically couldn't see. So once they could see, it was like teaching a third grader at a kindergarten level again, because we had to start from scratch for all the things that she never learned the first time. As you go along, it seems like everything's going fine, but then there's another aspect, which is eye strain and fatigue. And it is a lot of sensory input to go from not being able to see to having all of the sensory input of seeing and looking at everything all the time and needing to take a break. So I had to implement break strategies. We would do a certain amount of things that required eye strain and work and stuff. And then there was a designated amount of time that she could go take a break away from the screen, pet a dog. I should clarify, this was a kid that was in person and moved away, and we got to keep working together. So they got to go, pet their dog and then come back. And so that way there was a break between visual stimulation and then coming back together to continue working when her eyes were ready and reset again to go. All right. And the third medical condition is ADHD. And I'm going under medical, even though we can think of it as just a learning difference or neurodiversity or whatnots. I'm going medical condition right now because of certain factors, one of which being medication. So I've worked with many kids with dyslexia, which means I've worked with many, many kids with ADHD. They often go hand in hand, and it doesn't always present the same way. Some kids are a little spacey and they, look like they're paying attention when really they're not actually paying attention to you. They're paying attention to their own thoughts. Some are moving around like they can't sit still. And I've seen it all. And I've also helped families through the process of working with medications. And I know that's not for everybody, but there's certain kids who physically cannot learn without their medications, and helping those kids through that process, helping them when they need to express to their parents and their doctor, like how they feel while they're trying to learn, and me helping them, put into words what seems to be helping them, what isn't seeming to helping them, and being able to help the kids advocate for themselves when they aren't feeling well or when they don't have their meds for the day. There are very high regulations on a lot of the ADHD medications, which means you can only get it like right when the next bottle is due. So if there's something that goes wrong that week, like the doctor's out of town and doesn't refill it, or the parent can't make it to the pharmacy because they're working before the pharmacy closes, there's all sorts of reasons they can't get their meds on time. And so I've had to help the kids parse out what can they do when they have their medicine and what can they do when they haven't had their medicine. And being able to know that, okay, if you haven't had your meds today, how do we have to change the way you learn today? How do we have to adjust for what you can get done in one sitting and what you need to get a break for? And what things do you know that if you keep doing it right now, it's just going to go downhill real fast and you might as well just wait till tomorrow and start over. And it's harder for the younger kids, but it's really wonderful that I get to work with many kids for years. One girl I worked for an entire decade with, who is off to college, and I'm so excited for her. But there were days when she'd be like, Miss Parnello, I haven't had my meds and this just isn't working. I just can't today. Can we do a session tomorrow even though it's not my normal day? And being able to help the kids know their own body and knowing their own needs and knowing how to communicate when they feel a certain way, that what it hinders them from being able to do because they just can't focus. And knowing that sometimes we just need to start fresh tomorrow, or they need to go take a nap and then log back in later, and things like that. So one of the things that can be really tricky is trying to find that balance. How do we meet their remediation needs and get all of their skills met that they need to meet, while also meeting their physical needs for whatever is happening with them medically? And there are many other ones along the way that I've also had. Some of the ones that still stump me to this day are kids with genetic conditions. I've had a couple kids over the years that were missing portions of chromosomes, and would have a really hard time learning things. They would start to learn it and then they would forget it, and I could never put my hand on what was going wrong. And then through really detailed medical testing, they found that there was genetic markers that certain genes were literally missing. And it was really hard because you never knew what that kid would know one day compared to the next. They might know it one day, but they don't know it the next day, and then they know it again next week. And you just never knew what was going to happen and what was going to stick. And, I've also seen kids over the years who have seizure conditions, whether they're absent seizures or grand mal seizures. They can also impact their memory and what they remember how to do. And so trying to decide, where do we let one thing end and the next begin, and decide what is today's focus? What is the thing that we really need to focus on for today to work? Some days we have to focus on the academic needs, even if the physical needs aren't ideal. And other times we have to say, you know what, we're cutting our losses, and today you need to do what your body needs to do to feel better. And it is an ever delicate balancing scale that I never know which way it's going to tip, but that's part of being an educator, right? Going with the flow and figuring out the best you can. All right, that is it for today, because there's a kid going to come into my office in the next 5 minutes, so I should probably hang up this podcast mic. And I hope you have a wonderful day. I hope I see you at all of the upcoming teacher trainings, and I'll see you next time. Thanks for tuning in to today's episode. If you want to learn even more about dyslexia, check out parnelloeducation.com/courses. See you next time.